My wife froze like she'd been caught doing something illegal the second she heard my keys in the door. And before I could even say hello, she blurted out, "Why didn't you text before coming back?" Like I had just walked into the wrong house instead of my own. It was almost midnight, and she was standing there in our kitchen fully dressed, makeup still perfect, phone pressed face down against the counter like it was something that needed to be hidden. And in 12 years of marriage, I had never felt like a stranger in my own home until that exact moment. The tone in her voice wasn't concern, it wasn't annoyance. It was panic trying to wear a normal face. And it hit me so fast it felt like my stomach just dropped through the floor. I told her the meeting ended early and I figured I'd just drive back instead of staying in the hotel. And she gave me this tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. The kind of smile people use when they're already thinking 3 steps ahead of you. "You really need to start communicating better, Mike," she said, already grabbing her phone and sliding it into her robe pocket like the motion had been practiced, automatic, like she'd done it 100 times before. I remember staring at that pocket longer than I should have, because a week earlier I had asked her gently who kept texting her through dinner, and she laughed like I had just insulted her. "It's work," she said. "Not everything is about you." And I believed her. Worse than that, I apologized. I actually sat there and apologized for asking a question that now felt like it should have been the beginning of everything. By morning, she was soft again, like nothing had happened, making coffee, touching my shoulder, asking if I could pick up the dry cleaning on my way home, slipping back into this version of herself that made me feel stupid for even doubting her. That was her pattern, I realize now. She would cut me just deep enough to make me question everything, and then hand me a version of herself that made me feel guilty for bleeding. I kept telling myself marriage has phases, that stress changes people, that maybe I had been distant, that maybe this was on me somehow. I kept choosing explanations that didn't hurt as much as the truth I was starting to feel in my chest. But that afternoon, I opened the drawer by the desk looking for a receipt, and instead I found a folded reservation card for a boutique hotel about 40 minutes from our house. 2 guests. Check-in last Friday. I remember just sitting there holding it, staring at the printed words like they might rearrange themselves into something harmless if I waited long enough, because last Friday she told me she was staying at her sister's place, said they needed girl time after a fight, and I had told her to enjoy it, told her not to worry about anything at home. I gave her space, I gave her trust. And now I was sitting there holding proof that whatever she had actually been doing, it wasn't what she told me. When she got home, I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just put the card on the table between us and said, "Tell me I'm wrong." That's all I asked for. Just give me something that makes this make sense. She looked at it once, then at me, and I swear I could see it happen. The exact moment she decided what kind of lie she was going to tell. "Wow," she said, letting out this small laugh like I had just said something ridiculous. "So now you're digging through drawers and inventing stories?" I felt my chest tighten, but I stayed calm. Told her again, "Just tell me I'm wrong and I'll drop it." She crossed her arms, leaned back, and looked at me like I was exhausting her. "It was for a friend," she said. "I used my card because hers was maxed out. You always do this, Mike. You find one weird thing and turn it into drama because you need to feel like the victim. And the worst part is, for a second, just a second, I felt that doubt creep in, like maybe she was right, like maybe I was the problem. And then my phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from my younger brother, Nate. "Hey, is Claire with you right now?" I didn't even have time to answer before I looked up at my wife, and in that exact second, her face drained of all color. Like whatever my brother knew was the one thing she had been praying I would never find out. She saw Nate's name on my screen and the entire performance cracked for half a second. It was tiny, just a twitch in her mouth and this dead stillness in her eyes. But after 12 years with her, I knew the difference between surprise and fear, and that was fear. I looked from the message to her face and asked, "Why would my brother be asking if you're with me?" She recovered so fast it almost made me question what I had seen. She shrugged, reached for her glass of water, and said, "How would I know?" Maybe he needs something. Maybe he texted the wrong person. You're doing that thing again where you take nothing and turn it into a courtroom. I called Nate right there on speaker, because at that point I needed one honest voice in that room, but it went straight to voicemail. Claire gave this little exhale through her nose and said, "There. Happy? Can we stop acting insane now?" But my hands were already shaking because Nate never ignored my calls, not when he had just texted something that strange. I texted him back, asked why he was asking, and before he could answer, Claire stepped closer and put her hand over my phone. "Enough," she said, and her voice got colder than I had heard it in years. "You are embarrassing yourself." I pulled my phone away and asked her again about the hotel, about Friday, about why my brother suddenly seemed to know something about where she was. She laughed, but this time there was nothing warm in it. "You want the truth?" she said. "The truth is you've been checked out for months, and now that you finally feel me slipping away, you want to play detective so you don't have to look at yourself." That hit me harder than I want to admit, because it was aimed with precision. She knew exactly where my guilt lived. She knew every insecurity I had dragged into this marriage, every fear about working too much, every moment I had been distracted or tired or emotionally unavailable, and she used all of it like a weapon to make me doubt what was right in front of me. Then Nate finally texted back, and I still remember how loud the buzz sounded in that silent kitchen. I looked down and felt the floor drop out from under me. He wrote, "She told Mom she was spending the night at your place Friday because you two were trying to work things out. Why?" I read it twice, maybe 3 times, because my brain would not accept it. She had not just lied to me about being with her sister. She had lied to my family too, built a second version of reality around the same night, covered herself from both sides so nobody would compare stories. When I looked up at her, she knew exactly what I had read. "Give me the phone," she said, and for the first time there was no pretending left, just control. I asked her why she told my mother that. Her jaw tightened and she snapped, "Because your family doesn't know how to mind their own business." I said, "So you did lie." She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume, and said in this low, vicious voice, "You have no idea what you're accusing me of, Mike. And if you keep pushing this, you are going to destroy something you cannot fix." That should have sounded like a warning from an innocent person tired of being questioned, but it did not. It sounded like a threat. I wish I could say I kept control after that, but I did not. I asked her who she was with at that hotel, and she stared at me for a long, flat second before saying, "Maybe ask the person who sent you there." I felt my whole body go numb. "What does that mean?" I said, already knowing I was about to hear something that would change the shape of my life. She folded her arms, looked me dead in the face, and said, "You really trust Nate more than me? After what he's been doing behind your back?" The moment she said that, something inside me split in a way I can't really explain, like my mind tried to reject the words, but they still landed somewhere deep and started doing damage anyway. I just stared at her and said, "Don't do that," because it felt like she had just taken the one person I trusted without question and dragged him into whatever this was. She tilted her head slightly, watching me like she was measuring how far she could push, and then she doubled down. "You think I'm the liar here?" she said, almost quietly. "You think your brother is some kind of saint?" I could feel anger rising, but it was tangled with confusion so thick I couldn't even think straight. Nate and I had been close our entire lives. He was the one who stood next to me at my wedding, the one who helped me move into this house, the one who called me just to check in when things got hard. The idea that he could be connected to this in any way didn't just feel wrong, it felt impossible. I asked her, "What are you even talking about?" And she let out this slow breath like she had been waiting for that exact question. "I wasn't going to tell you," she said, looking down for a second like she was suddenly tired, like this whole thing was a burden she had been carrying alone. "Because I knew you'd react exactly like this. Blind loyalty, no questions." I felt my chest tighten because she was shifting the ground again, turning this into something where she was the one protecting me, where she was the one being forced into the truth. "Tell me what?" I said. and my voice sounded smaller than I wanted it to. She looked back up at me and said, "Nate's been texting me for months." The room went completely silent after that, like even the air didn't know how to move around those words. I shook my head immediately, almost on instinct, because it was easier than accepting it. "No," I said, "that's not true." She didn't argue right away. She just reached into her robe pocket, slowly this time, and pulled out her phone. My stomach dropped because suddenly I understood why she had been so protective of it, why she kept flipping it face down, why she carried it everywhere like it was something fragile and dangerous at the same time. She unlocked it, tapped a few times, and then held it out toward me. "Read it," she said. "Go ahead. See how perfect your brother really is." I hesitated for a second, not because I didn't want to see, but because I knew that whatever was on that screen was about to take something from me that I could never get back. When I took the phone, my hands were actually trembling. The thread was there, his name at the top, and as I scrolled, I saw messages that made no sense in the context of the person I thought I knew. "I miss talking to you like this. You deserve better than how he treats you. I wish things were different." My vision started to blur because I couldn't reconcile the words with the image of him in my head. I looked up at her and said, "This doesn't prove anything," because I was desperate for it not to. She let out this sharp, almost offended laugh. "Of course you'd say that," she said. "Keep scrolling." I didn't want to, but I did. And then I hit a message time-stamped last Friday, the same night as the hotel reservation. It was from Nate. Just one line. "Same place as we talked about. Don't tell him." I felt something inside my chest collapse in on itself as I read it again, slower this time, hoping I had misunderstood. I looked up at her, barely able to get the words out. You're saying you met him there?" My voice cracked in a way that made me feel exposed, like I was standing there without any protection left. She didn't answer right away. She just watched me, and for a second I thought I saw something almost like regret in her eyes. But it vanished so quickly I couldn't be sure it was ever there. Then she said, "I didn't want it to happen like this." And that was it. That was all she gave me. Like that sentence alone explained everything. I felt anger surge up so violently it scared me, but underneath it was something worse, something hollow and cold. "You're lying," I said, even though I wasn't sure who I was trying to convince anymore. "You're twisting something. This isn't real." She stepped closer again, lowering her voice like she was telling me a secret meant only for me. "You think I'm the only one who's been unhappy?" she said. "You think you're the only one who noticed things changing?" I could barely hear her over the sound of my own heartbeat, but then she added, almost gently, "He noticed too, Mike. He was there when you weren't." That sentence hit harder than anything else she had said, because it wasn't just an accusation, it was a rewrite of my entire life, a suggestion that while I thought I was building something stable, someone else had been quietly stepping into my place. And right as I opened my mouth to respond, my phone started ringing in my hand. It was Nate calling me back. I just stared at his name lighting up my screen while everything inside me screamed not to answer, like if I let it ring long enough, maybe this version of reality would collapse, and I could go back to 10 minutes ago when the worst thing in my life was a weird hotel receipt. Claire didn't say anything this time. She just watched me, arms folded, eyes locked on my face like she was waiting to see which version of me would show up, the brother or the husband. My thumb hovered over the screen and I swear I could feel my pulse in it, heavy and uneven. And then I answered. "Yeah," I said, but it came out rough, like my voice didn't belong to me anymore. "Mike," Nate said immediately, and there was something off in his tone, something tight and cautious that made my stomach twist even harder. "Hey, I just saw your call. Everything okay?" I let out this short, hollow laugh because the question felt almost cruel. "You tell me," I said, glancing at Claire, who didn't flinch. "Why are you texting me asking if my wife is with me?" There was a pause on the other end, not long, but long enough to say everything he wasn't saying. I thought she might be, he replied, and the hesitation in his voice felt like confirmation of something I still didn't fully understand. Why wouldn't she be? I pushed, my chest tightening with every second. Claire suddenly stepped closer, her voice cutting in sharp and controlled. Put it on speaker, she said. I didn't move. I couldn't. Something in me knew that once everything was out in the open, there was no going back to pretending. Mike, Nate said again, more urgent now. What's going on? I closed my eyes for a second, then hit the button. You're on speaker, I said. There was another pause, heavier this time, and then Claire spoke before I could say anything else. Go ahead, Nate, she said, her tone almost calm, almost composed. Tell him what you've been telling me. The silence that followed felt like it stretched forever. What? Nate said, confusion bleeding into his voice. Claire, what are you talking about? I looked at her, searching for any sign that this was about to unravel into something normal, something explainable. But she just held her ground. Don't do that, she replied, a hint of irritation slipping through. You don't get to act confused now. My grip on the phone tightened. Act confused about what? I asked, my voice rising despite myself. Because right now I've got a hotel receipt, a bunch of messages, and my wife telling me you've been meeting her behind my back. The words felt unreal as I said them, like I was repeating lines from someone else's nightmare. What? Nate's voice cracked, and this time it sounded genuine, raw in a way I had never heard from him before. Mike, I have no idea what she's talking about. Claire let out a soft, almost mocking laugh. Of course you don't, she said. You never do when it matters. I felt like I was being pulled in two directions at once, both of them demanding I choose who to believe, and I hated that I couldn't immediately choose him. That hesitation alone made me feel like I was already losing something I couldn't repair. Then explain the messages, I said, forcing the words out. Explain Friday. Explain why you told her not to tell me. There was a sharp inhale on the other end of the line, and then Nate said something that made my blood run cold. Mike, I never sent her anything like that, he said slowly. And I haven't seen Claire in person in over 3 months. I turned to her so fast it almost made me dizzy. She didn't look surprised. She didn't look caught. If anything, she looked almost disappointed. There it is, she said quietly, shaking her head like she had expected this all along. He's lying to you. I felt something inside me fracture again, deeper this time, because now there were only 2 possibilities, and both of them destroyed me in completely different ways. I looked back at the phone, my voice barely holding together. Nate, swear to me, I said. Swear to me you're telling the truth. He didn't hesitate. I swear, he said. And right as those words settled in, Claire reached over, took her phone from my hand, and turned the screen toward me again. Then maybe, she said softly, you should look at who those messages were actually coming from. I felt my chest tighten as I leaned closer to the screen, like whatever truth was sitting there was something my body was trying to physically resist. The contact name at the top still said Nate, but something about it suddenly looked wrong, too clean, too convenient, like a label someone had placed there on purpose. Open it, Claire said, her voice low, almost steady in a way that made it worse. My fingers hesitated for just a second before I tapped into the contact details, and the moment the number appeared, my stomach dropped so hard it felt like I might actually collapse. It wasn't Nate's number, not even close. I looked up at her, completely disoriented. What is this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She didn't answer right away, just watched me process it, like she needed me to arrive at the conclusion on my own. You were so ready to believe it, she said finally, not loud, not angry, just cold. You didn't even question it. One name on a screen and suddenly your entire relationship with your brother meant nothing. I shook my head, trying to catch up, trying to rebuild something stable out of the chaos. Then who is it? I asked. Who have you been talking to? That was the question that mattered now, more than anything, because whoever it was had just torn my life apart without even being in the room. Claire took the phone back slowly, almost carefully, like it was something fragile again. "Does it really matter?" she said. That answer hit me like a slap. "Yes, it matters," I snapped, louder than I meant to. "It matters because you lied. You let me think it was him. You let me believe my own brother betrayed me." She flinched slightly at that, but instead of apologizing, her expression hardened. "I didn't let you believe anything," she shot back. "You jumped there all on your own. I showed you exactly what you wanted to see." That twisted something in me because there was just enough truth in it to make me doubt myself again, and I hated that she could still do that even now. My phone was still in my other hand, the call with Nate still active, quiet but present like a witness to everything unraveling. "Mike?" he said cautiously. "What's going on?" I swallowed hard, trying to ground myself in something real. "The messages, they're not from your number," I said, my voice unsteady. There was a pause, then relief flooded into his tone so quickly it almost hurt to hear. "I told you," he said. "I told you I didn't send that." I should have felt relieved too, but I didn't. Because if it wasn't him, then that meant there was someone else, someone she had gone to a hotel with, someone she had hidden so carefully that she was willing to let me accuse my own brother just to keep it buried. "Who is it, Claire?" I asked again, slower this time, forcing every word out like it weighed something. She looked at me, really looked at me, and for a moment I thought I saw something crack beneath the surface, something human, something almost like regret. But then it was gone, replaced by that same guarded, distant expression I had been seeing more and more lately. "You don't know him," she said. "It's not someone in your life." That should have made it easier. It should have been a relief. But it wasn't. Because the way she said it felt rehearsed, like a line she had prepared in case this exact moment ever came. "Then why the fake name?" I pushed. "Why save him as Nate?" That was the part I couldn't let go of. The part that felt too deliberate to be an accident. She hesitated this time, just long enough to confirm my suspicion. "Because I knew you'd look," she admitted quietly. "And I knew you'd react." I felt my stomach twist again. "React how?" I asked, even though I already knew. She held my gaze and said, "Exactly like this." The room felt suffocating, like every wall was closing in at once, because she hadn't just been hiding something, she had been planning for this moment, anticipating my reaction, shaping it before it even happened. On the phone, Nate spoke again, more urgent now. "Mike, listen to me," he said. "Something's not right here. You need to—" But I barely heard the rest, because my focus was locked on Claire, on the way she was standing there so composed while everything inside me was falling apart. "Friday," I said, my voice almost breaking. "You were still at that hotel. That part is real. So who were you with?" She didn't answer immediately. She looked away for the first time since this started, and that silence told me more than any words could have. Then she finally spoke, so quietly I almost missed it. "You've met him," she said. And just like that, everything got worse again. The second she said that, my mind started racing through faces like it was trying to outrun the truth before it could land. Friends, co-workers, neighbors, people who had been in our house, people who had sat at our table, people I had trusted without thinking twice because they were part of the life I believed was solid. "No," I said under my breath, shaking my head like I could physically reject it. "No, that's not. You don't get to say something like that and just stand there." My voice rose without me meaning it to, the panic finally breaking through the anger. "Who?" I demanded. "Who have I met, Claire?" She didn't answer right away, and that silence was louder than anything she could have said. I watched her swallow, watched her eyes flick away from mine for just a second, and that was all it took for something dark and heavy to settle in my chest. Because she wasn't denying it. She wasn't correcting herself. She was choosing whether or not to say it out loud. "It doesn't change anything," she said finally. And that sentence hit me like a slap because it meant it changed everything. It changes everything, I shot back immediately. You don't get to decide what matters right now. You lost that when you walked into that hotel with someone I know. On the phone, Nate was still there, still listening, and I could hear the tension in his breathing. "Mike, who is she talking about?" he asked, his voice tight. I didn't answer him because I didn't have an answer, not yet. Just a growing sense of dread that was starting to feel unbearable. "Claire," I said again, slower this time, trying to hold on to whatever control I had left. "Look at me and tell me his name." For a moment, I thought she wouldn't. I thought she would keep dragging this out, keep twisting things until I didn't know what was real anymore. But then she looked back at me, and there was something different in her expression this time. Not guilt, not exactly. Something closer to resignation. "You're going to find out anyway," she said quietly. "So what's the point of pretending?" My heart started pounding so hard it felt like it was in my throat. "Then say it," I pushed. "Just say it." She took a breath, and for a split second I saw that same flicker of hesitation again, like some part of her understood what this was about to do. But it didn't stop her. "It's Daniel." The name hit me, but it didn't land right away. It just hung there, like my brain refused to connect it to anything real. "Daniel?" I repeated, confused, searching her face for context, for something that would make it make sense. And then it clicked. Not all at once, but in pieces that came together too fast to stop. Daniel, my best friend. The man who had been in my house just 2 weeks ago, sitting on that same couch, laughing with me, asking Claire how she'd been, acting like everything was normal. I felt the room tilt slightly, like my body was trying to process something it couldn't stabilize. "No," I said, but this time there was no confidence behind it, just desperation. "No, that's not. You're lying again. You have to be lying." Claire didn't react the way I expected. She didn't argue. She didn't push back. She just looked at me, steady and almost tired. "I'm not lying," she said. On the phone, Nate spoke again, sharp and immediate. "That's not possible," he said. "Mike, that's not possible." But his voice didn't sound certain. It sounded shaken. I ran a hand through my hair, pacing once across the kitchen like movement might help me breathe. "Daniel wouldn't do that," I said, more to myself than to either of them. He wouldn't, but even as I said it, memories started surfacing, small things I had ignored. The way Daniel had started showing up more often when I was working late. The way Claire would mention his name casually, like it meant nothing. The way he had once canceled plans with me last minute, saying something came up. The same night Claire told me she was going to bed early. "No," I said again, but it sounded weaker now, like something already breaking. "Call him," Claire said suddenly. I stopped pacing and looked at her. "What?" "Call him," she repeated, her voice steady. "If I'm lying, he'll tell you." That confidence should have reassured me. It should have made this easy. But instead, it made my stomach twist even tighter, because it felt like she already knew what he was going to say. My hand slowly lowered back to my phone. Nate was still on the line, silent now, like he was waiting for the same answer I was. I pulled up Daniel's contact, my thumb hovering over the call button, my entire body tense. And for the first time since this started, I realized I was afraid to know the truth. My thumb hovered over Daniel's name longer than I want to admit, like there was still a version of reality where not pressing that button could somehow protect me. The kitchen felt too quiet, the kind of silence that presses in on your ears until you can hear your own heartbeat, heavy and uneven. Claire didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there watching me like she had already accepted whatever was about to happen. Nate was still on the line, breathing quietly, waiting. And I realized in that moment that both of them were about to hear something that would define the rest of my life. I hit call. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Each second stretched so long it felt unreal, like time itself was resisting the answer. Then he picked up. "Mike," Daniel said, casual, familiar, like every other time he had answered my calls over the years. "Hey man, what's up?" That voice almost broke me right there, because there was no hesitation in it, no guilt, no sign that anything was wrong. Just the same guy I had trusted like family. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "I need you to be honest with me," I said, forcing the words out slowly so they wouldn't shake. There was a small pause on his end, barely noticeable, but I felt it. "Okay," he replied, cautious now. "What's going on?" I glanced at Claire. She gave the smallest nod, like she was telling me to go ahead, like she had already played this moment out in her head. "Friday night," I said. "Where were you?" Another pause. Longer this time. Not confusion, not thinking, something else. "I told you, man," he said, his tone shifting slightly. "I had stuff to deal with. Why?" My grip tightened around the phone. "Don't do that," I said, my voice sharper now. "Don't give me a vague answer. I need to know exactly where you were." The silence that followed felt heavy, like it carried weight. "Why are you asking me this?" he said finally. And there it was again. That careful tone, like he was choosing each word instead of speaking naturally. My chest tightened. "Because Claire just told me something," I said, my voice dropping. "And I need to hear you say it isn't true." I could hear him exhale slowly, and that sound alone made something inside me start to collapse. "Mike," he started, but he didn't finish. He didn't deny it. He didn't even sound surprised. That was the moment everything shifted. Not when Claire said his name. Not when I found the messages. This hesitation. This space where the truth should have been. "Just say it," I said, almost pleading now. "Say you weren't with her." The words felt heavy, like they carried everything I had left. On the other end, Daniel was quiet for what felt like forever. Then he said something I wasn't prepared for. "It's not what you think." I actually laughed when I heard that, but there was nothing normal in it. It sounded hollow, almost broken. "That's what people say when it's exactly what I think," I shot back, my voice rising. "So I'm going to ask you one more time, and I need a real answer. Were you with my wife on Friday night?" Another pause, and then, "Mike, I didn't plan for it to happen like this." I felt something inside me snap completely. Behind me, I heard Nate curse under his breath through the phone, but it sounded distant, like it was coming from another room. My entire focus locked onto that one sentence, the way Daniel said it, like it was some kind of explanation instead of a confession. "You didn't plan it?" I repeated slowly, my voice dangerously quiet. "You didn't plan it?" I looked at Claire, who didn't even try to hide it anymore, her expression unreadable, almost detached. "How long?" I asked, my eyes still on her, but the question meant for him. Neither of them answered, and that silence was worse than anything they could have said. That silence stretched so long it stopped feeling like a pause and started feeling like an answer. I stood there between them, one on the phone, one right in front of me, and neither of them could say a single word to fill the space where my entire life used to be. "How long?" I asked again, louder this time, because I needed something solid, something I could measure, something that would tell me how far back this betrayal actually went. Claire looked away first, which told me more than any number ever could. Daniel let out a slow breath on the other end of the line, and I could hear it shaking now, like whatever confidence he had before was finally cracking. "Mike," he started again, but I cut him off. "No," I said sharply. "No more of that. No more Mike like we're still who we were 5 minutes ago. You don't get to say my name like that anymore. You answer the question." My voice didn't sound like mine anymore. It sounded colder, flatter, like something had burned out inside me and left something else in its place. There was another pause, shorter this time, and then he said it. "About 6 months." 6 months. I actually had to sit down because my legs stopped feeling like they belonged to me. 6 months of conversations, of lies, of shared spaces that I thought were safe. 6 months of him standing next to me, shaking my hand, asking how work was going, while carrying something like that behind his back. 6 months of her looking me in the eyes every single day and choosing not to tell me. I let out this slow, unsteady breath and looked up at Claire. 6 months, I repeated quietly. She didn't deny it. That's not even the worst part, she said. I felt something inside me brace without my permission, like my body knew before my mind did that whatever came next was going to hit harder than everything before it. What could possibly be worse than that? I asked, almost numb now. She hesitated, and for the first time since this started, she actually looked uncertain. Not guilty, not sorry, just unsure. You think this started 6 months ago, she said slowly. My chest tightened again. That's what he just said, I replied, my voice low, controlled, because I was holding on to the last thread of composure I had left. She shook her head slightly, like she was correcting something small instead of dismantling everything. That's when it became physical, she said. The words didn't fully register at first. They just floated there, disconnected, like my brain was trying to protect me by delaying the meaning. Then it hit. Then what are you saying? I asked, my voice barely holding together. She looked me straight in the eyes when she answered. I've been talking to him for over a year. A year. I felt something collapse inside me in a way that was quieter than before, deeper, like this time there was nothing left to even react with. Just this heavy, hollow space where trust used to live. On the phone, Daniel said my name again, softer this time, like he was trying to reach me, but it didn't land. None of it did. And then Claire added one last thing, almost like an afterthought, like it was just another detail in a story that had already gone too far. You want to know what the worst part is? She said. I didn't answer. I couldn't. She took a breath and said, You're the one who brought him into our lives.